إنا نحن نزلنا عليك القرآن تنزيلا فاصبر لحكم ربك ولا تطع منهم آثما أو كفورا واذكر اسم ربك بكرة وأصيلا ومن الليل فاسجد له وسبحه ليلا طويلا.
At a very controversial topic indeed, and I tell you that this is a topic that you will never want to afford to miss. And as it's our culture, I will not be doing that alone, and that's why I'm having in the studio my ever eloquent, young, and brilliant minds. To my right, of course,
Yakub Hassan.
Nam, you must be baffled right now that what could be that topic that could get us so excited in the studio today. But I tell you that the topic we'll be looking into is music and Islam. The very first thing that must come to your mind is what relationship should exist between music and Islam. Because I know some of you might think that probably when you talk about Islam, it's all about, you just going to the mosque, performing your ablution and observing your salah. But I tell you that you are so much misguided if you think that's all Islam is all about. Because I must say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the glorious Quran, talk about Surah Al-Baqarah, Quran chapter 2, verse 208, that Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu idkhulu fi silmi kafa wa la tattabi'u khutuwati shaytan innahu lakum aduwwun mubin. That is, oh you believe, enter into Islam wholeheartedly and do not follow the footstep of Shaitan, for he is indeed a manifest enemy to you.
Correct.
Now when you're talking about Islam, of course you know that Islam is an all-encompassing religion that has a lot to do with your social life, your economical life, your political life, and all aspects of life.
Yes.
And that is why the aspect of music can also not be ruled out in Islam.
Yes, from that perspective, you are very, very correct. I think at this point we should define what music is. Music is the rhythmic sound that we listen to, which can arouse different feelings or pleasure. In another era where we find ourselves today, we discovered that music took the center stage. To the extent that wherever you go, you listen to music. If you are going on the streets, you visit the supermarket. What you listen to is music, and the influence is really affecting our society.
I think at this point, I would like to chip in, because the general impression of Muslims out there is that music is not allowed in Islam. But music is allowed in Islam, but we have to observe these following limits. Number one, the content, the subject matter of
looking at a video of Irfan Maki featuring Marazin, and I was actually asking myself that what could be the difference between these guys and probably those other guys out there
in the contemporary world.
Exactly. Contemporary hip-hop artists.
Exactly.
But something struck my mind that when you consider the content of these things,
yes,
these things or this music, as they are actually passing across some messages to us.
Exactly.
And and of course that Islam is all about the lesser evil and the greater evil,
exactly,
and the greater good and the lesser good. So if you consider this on this platform, of course that the nasheed and the music which we just listen to could be passing across some particular messages.
Exactly.
Why the same cannot be said of the other
ones
talking
about?
View, yes. I would love to say that we can view an nasheed and the contemporary world music. See, the contemporary world music, when you look at it vividly, it's bring about corruption.
Exactly.
And in which we have to protect against. That's why we would not condemn an nasheed, because that's where we learn more about our religion, where they bring about telling us, putting in a form of rhythm, telling us about our religion, Islam, and putting singing it. But when you look at the contemporary world, they tell us about nudity and bringing about female folks in in a negative form.
Before you go on, Sister Rukoya Dawood actually started something, but she was unable to finish, and it's actually something I think that we need to talk about, and that's the aspect. No, not the limitation. The aspect whereby of course we know that there are differences of scholar as regards music. Some are of the opinion that anything that has to do with music is purely haramic, and it should not be neared by Muslims. While I tell you that those scholars, or those people rather, who hold to that opinion, they might be doing that on a very weak basis, because the particular hadith they are holding on to is a very weak one. And I tell you that in various parts of Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, and even at Tirmidhi himself, we have evidences that show that the Prophet Muhammad and even some of his wives were actually engaged in this. However, like she said, also that there must be some limitation.
Exactly.
For instance, there was a particular incident whereby the Prophet ﷺ got to his mosque in Medina and he met some Abyssinian Muslims playing with their spear and singing. And he actually encouraged and enjoined Aisha that would she actually like to watch. And she stayed, she watched, and after a while she left to go and play with her friends. And that should just pass a message that if truly this is not allowed, then Prophet ﷺ would never have encouraged that in the first place. And that hadith was actually narrated by Bukhari or Muslim. So.
Yeah, you are very correct. So in other words, during time of festival, some certain kind of music can be played. Just to since it's a festival and we need to go along with the festival, so that kind of music need to be played so that people around will know that yes, we're actually celebrating a festival. So
that is where the issue of the female singing comes in. That during festival, female are allowed to sing within themselves, with the exclusion of male being around. That means that the total absence of male is very encouraged. That male should not be around when they are singing. The secondly is when a bride is about to get married, the night before the wedding. The Prophet actually encouraged us to make the bride happy so that she will be so happy that she's getting married a night before the wedding. And thirdly, during the festival period, both the big festival and the
victory.
Yes. So females are allowed to sing, with the exception that a male should not be there.
Should not be their midst.
So females are allowed to sing and dance in the total absence of males.
Yeah, bro, probably was actually talking about the effects. Now, doctors carried out a research that listening to music affect the brain, and we know whatever affect the brain affect other parts of the body. So the brain is like whatever happens to the brain happens to other parts of the body. So which means if somebody have to put earpiece on his ear, listen to music, and it affects the eardrum, and the eardrum sends signals to the brain. So in other words, so the effects is very.
I think at this juncture it must just be noted that we all know Islam is the religion of moderacy. That's talking about the Wasatiyatul Islamiyya. That is, everything in Islam has to be moderate and balanced. For those going to the extreme left, that's not Islam. While those going to the extreme right, of course, that's not Islam. You have to strike a balance and be moderate with everything you do. And same goes for music. You should imagine if there could be, if the excess of worship is also not permitted in Islam. So my dear brothers, why should excessive entertainment or music should also be allowed in Islam? So in other words, music could be allowed when those limitations or conditions, which my sister has rightly highlighted earlier, are met. Of course, allowed, but it should not get to the I was actually discussing with some of my friends earlier, and I realized that some of them have kind of picked up habits of not even being able to study effectively without actually having some kind of a rhythm and
the actual fact is that they've turned it to a habit. They turn it to a culture.
An addiction now.
Yes, it's addicted to them. They can't do any other thing without listening to music. Either they are doing the domesticated work at home, they must listen to music. They are washing their clothes, they are reading their books. They must listen to music.
I don't really blame them, because if you consider the media today now, talk about adverts on TVs, talk about radio, everywhere. It's all everywhere.
That's where we come about the context of the melodious the contemporary world music and nasheed.
Exactly.
If you compare the two, they are very, very different.
Yes, you're very correct.
Because yes. If you look at the youth of today, most of them, let me say, they are just growing, trying to learn more about their religion.
Exactly.
But this contemporary world comes in order to hijack, to take away what they need to know about their deen. So we need to bring that back. And bringing that back to nasheed shouldn't involve some things, which is the use of Quran. We try to abstain from that.
Exactly.
On that note, I think it must be really emphasized that despite the fact that nasheed itself is permitted, of course, that there should be some limitation that has been said earlier, which is something that should be noted very, very importantly, is the fact that the use of Quranic verses as sung, of course, it is strongly disallowed and just plainly haram. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Haqq, Quran chapter 69, verse 41, that this Quran are not the words of a poet. In other
Exactly.
words, so you have no right to actually turn it into a kind of a poem and start singing with it.
So
this strongly frank that. And secondly is that when you consider some other portion of the Quran, talk about Surah Al-Anfal, Quran chapter 8 verse 2, it's clearly stated that one of those characteristics of the true believer is that when the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are recited to them, their heart will shiver with the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I tell you that once you are singing to them, singing and music is a general merry-making stuff, and of course that would definitely kill whatever consciousness they have towards Allah.
So in essence, the verses of the Quran should be reflected upon, should be pondered upon. It should not be used as music because it is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
And another thing is that the Quran is the most melodious book we could ever think of.
Exactly.
So instead of listening to all this contemporary music, we should try to get ourselves involved in recitation of Quran.
Yes.
If you don't know how to recite, you play your cassette, then you listen to it.
Exactly.
So
your mobile phones and the likes.
It's an iPod too. You can listen to it.
Exactly.
I think we should note at this point that anytime we are in form of difficulty, we are experiencing difficulty, we should try to seek solace in the Quran. Because when you listen to the Quran, it's a form of guidance. It gives us hope. When you listen to the Quran with maybe reciters like today's, even though you don't know the meaning, you can pick up the Quran and check for the meaning. So it's going to create a form of solace in our hearts, rather than being addicted to listen to music and saying, okay, it's only music that I can actually see solace from. So you can actually seek solace in Quran and hope.
In fact, I tell you that the best medicine to the heart is, of course, the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the Quran. And it's quite pathetic and unfortunate that a lot of people have become so addicted to music that, while they are sleeping, they listen to it. For them to sleep, they listen to it. For them to study effectively, they listen to it. And thereby, it takes the Quran away from them. And, that's why it is, it is not, it's kind of a slight. And at this point, I think it must be said, however, that, the use, if I'm asked to counsel a brother who is fond of contemporary hip-hop, rap and the likes, of course I won't just tell the person to just drop it totally or entirely like that. Of course I could recommend some Islamic or music singers to him or her, and of course I believe that talk about Dawood Wansby, talk about Zimbicha and the likes. These are very beautiful and nashidist, if you permit me to use that word, of course, who actually portray the beauty of Islam without the use of instruments. And I tell you, dear brothers and sisters out there, that these are indeed paths for you to follow in order not to transgress those bounds which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has explicitly stated in the Quran. And on a very final note, I think we must actually thank Tasfam Beverages, the producer of Nasita, for showing their support towards this program. Of course, we say a very big jazakumullah khairan to you all. And to our esteemed viewers out there, I believe that you have been able to draw out one or two salient things as regards music and Islam. And for those who initially thought that Islam has nothing to do with music, or music has nothing to do with Islam, then I believe you must have had a rethink by now. And it is on this final note that I will tell you that if you want to be a part of this program, you can definitely do that by logging onto your Facebook account and typing Islam is Beautiful TV show. Your comments, contributions and the answers will inshallah be attended to. And it is on this final note that we are reminding you that Islam is indeed beautiful. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.